together each day. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Raw Recovery, a Trudging Together podcast. My name is Dion, and I am here with my host.
Hi, I'm Amber.
Hi, Amber. It's good to have you. Now,
Thank
Amber's
you.
had a tough week, so if you are not easy on her, you will hear from me. So, right, what do we say? We're not all sick on the same day, and we need each other. We need each other when it comes to that. I know, last week I was having a harder time, and Amber and my group kind of circled around me and kept me protected. That was nice of you. That's what we get to do for each other in this program. So
it was the beginning of the week. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I'm getting a bunch of reminders to start this. I'm going to be doing a little bit of sharing while I'm talking here. Since we are live, why did it not put the, oh, that's okay. So what we're going to be talking about today are the 5 simple suggestions to thoroughly follow the path. And this was Amber's. And Amber, what made you think about this as a topic for the podcast?
So with my sponsorship family, our biggest thing is just keeping it simple. And these 5 simple suggestions are right out of the big book. Taking a sentence and putting it into, 1 or 2 words, and then just repeating those 5 simple suggestions have really helped me a lot throughout my entire sobriety. I just figured, you don't really hear these things in the big book be called the 5 suggestions to thoroughly get you through the path, that's kind of where I was like, you know what, I'll bring something from my sponsorship family into the mix this time.
Yeah. And you know what, while we talk before we get started, what is a sponsorship family?
Well, a sponsor in general is, somebody that takes you through the 12 steps of, in the big book as they're laid out. The big book is titled Alcoholics Anonymous. And, a sponsor, they can be a friend, but they don't necessarily have to be a friend.
Sure.
There's somebody that's willing to pass the message that was freely given to them, as it's laid out in the book, But yeah, my sponsorship family is really cool, and I feel really lucky to have fallen into it with this being my first sponsor experience in the first place. But my sponsor still talks to his sponsor every single day, which is my grand sponsor. And my grand sponsor and his sponsor are the ones that kind of came up with what we call the manual to the big book.
Okay.
And that's where I was introduced to the 5 suggestions to thoroughly follow the path, was in the manual to the big book that we have. The manual to the big book isn't anything fancy. It's literally just simple instructions on how to take a person through the steps. That's it,
Yeah.
And so, him and his sponsor are the ones that, decided to put it on paper. They had a really simple, solid way. And it's, they weren't putting their twist on what was already in the book.
Sure.
So they wrote it out, put it in a PDF form. And now when I go to the sponsorship family, everybody is linked to each other, one way or another by sponsorship. And every single one of us has used this manual to the big book. So when we reference things like, 5 suggestions to thoroughly follow the path, I don't sound like a cuckoo in this, once a month meeting that we got going on. That once a month meeting is, it's a guaranteed place to go for me, that I know that everybody in that meeting has either, 1, worked the steps exactly how I have, or 2, they are working the steps exactly like I have. Yeah, so that's kind of what our sponsorship family is all about.
Yeah. And what's great about a sponsorship family too is if your sponsor isn't available, somebody else in that group probably is. And since they're all on the same page and you're being accountable with them, they can actually help you. Because they're saying, oh, no, that's not what we do here. So
100%.
Great. Well, we've got some time in here. Welcome to everybody that's joining us. We're going to be talking about the 5 simple suggestions to thoroughly follow the path. And Amber's going to kind of be taking over from here. And I'm looking forward to this. I mean, I love talking about this stuff, but I want to hear a different experience. You know, we're going to hear a different experience. And the other thing I'd like to let you know is chat is available. And if you want to chat, please feel free to. If you just want to say hi, or maybe you have a different experience or you want to add on, please feel free to do that. So from here, I'm going to kind of let Amber take over as host, and we're going to learn some things. So Amber, go for it, and I will run the background.
Thanks, Dion. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate you doing this podcast and everything that you do for the recovery world. It helps a lot for me, at least.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll kind of rewind a little bit.
Okay.
The 5 suggestions to thoroughly follow the path that was given to me, what right after I did step 2, but right before I did step 3.
Okay.
I'll read something on page 47 in the big book. It's pretty much step 2. We need to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe that a power greater than myself, that there is a power greater than myself? As soon as a man says he does believe or is willing to believe, we empathetically assure him that he is on his way. It has been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built.
Yep.
And so, that word simple right there really stood out to me. My sponsor and I talked about like what my belief was, not even necessarily what my belief was. He actually just asked me, like, do you believe in something greater than yourself?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, cool. Let's keep going. Like, let's not waste time on that, right?
Yeah.
And he also told me if you would have said no, that would have been okay too, because you're at
Absolutely.
least willing to sit here with me today.
And there it is.
And yeah, he also explained to me, like, as long as you don't think you're God, we're good, right? But he was like, but before we move to step 3, I'm going to give you 5 simple things to thoroughly follow the path. Then he had me turn to page 85. And so 85 being chapter 5, how it works. Well, okay, cool. How it works. That's how I'm going to follow the path, right? But this chapter is, packed with a lot of good stuff, right?
Yeah.
But the second sentence down on the 58 page, it says, those who do not recover are people who cannot completely give themselves to this simple program.
Yeah.
Once again, there's that word simple, right? So keep it simple. Like I think I may have mentioned earlier, my sponsorship family, we really truly focus on keeping it simple.
Yeah.
My sponsor, I met him, 16-ish months ago, and he told me, we keep it kindergarten simple. And now my son's going into kindergarten, and I'm like, I don't know if it's that simple, but it's simple. It's
It
super
is.
simple. So it's just keeping it simple, right? So it says people who cannot or will not, they are not completely given themselves to this simple program. Well, what is this program, right? Well, Dr. Bob talked about it in his, not Dr. Bob too, but I'm sorry, Dr. Silkworth in the beginning,
Yeah.
the doctor's opinion. He talked about how the program is a few simple rules, right? So it's just a few simple rules. Frothy alcoholics call it suggestions, but for me, I needed it to be rules.
Yeah.
So my
So
sponsor had me
is keep it simple the first rule, the first suggestion?
kinda. So that's what I was just gonna get at. He had
Okay.
me in my left column, he had me write number 1, follow directions.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah,
And that's
follow
great.
directions.
Yep.
And and then he had me put in parentheses surrender. And before that we had talked about, well, what is surrendering? Surrendering is when we,
Hmm.
stop fighting everything and everyone and we
Yeah.
relax, we throw up that white flag, and when you stop
Hmm.
fighting is when you start following directions.
Yep.
Start following those few simple rules of which this program is, right?
Absolutely.
Um, if we don't follow the rules on the road, we don't have a license.
That's right.
Simple.
Yep.
Then
Well, and
he,
we alcoholics, we don't, when we talk about things like direction and conformity and we're not big on, we're not big on that. So the fact that they started out with saying that it is suggested, I think really, really helps us see that it can be simple. So, because I know the number one thing is we alcoholics don't like being told what to do, period. So we have to be
mhm,
approached kindergarten simple.
yep,
Absolutely. Layman's terms is what we used to call it.
yep, 100%.
Yeah.
Um, and especially with how mushy and defeated I was when I was doing my
Yeah.
step work. I met my sponsor on day 3 and, excuse me, it took me a little while to read the portion that he wanted me to read,
Yeah.
because my brain was so mushy, but I was still within a week, I was up to page 63 where he wanted me to be, and we
Wow.
were able to sit
Yeah.
down. Um, I will give that a lot up to that app, Everything AA. They have the audio on there too.
Yeah.
So was able to follow along with somebody reading. That's how mushy my brain was.
Yep.
And
Great
so that
idea.
helps. It
Great
helped a
idea.
lot. And
Yeah.
and then yeah, as a mom, I don't get a whole lot of alone time or sit down reading time. So having that
Yeah.
audio when I was in the shower was really helpful too.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm a big
but
fan of the Everything AA app. Even though it's not run by AA, but
yeah,
that's okay. I mean, they're a good company. The people
yep,
running it is a good company. So,
exactly.
and
Yeah.
we need all of that. And I never thought, because and this is why we talk. It's like, well, I can listen to it or I can read it. Well, I can do both. It's a great
Exactly.
suggestion. Hi, Michelle. Good to have you, sis.
Sure. Yeah, I love it when an old timer's like, I listened on it on a cassette tape, and you probably don't even know what a cassette tape is. And I love cassette tapes. But yeah, just to see it evolve, but at the same time stay the same. Like the message, the book is the same, the message is the same, the steps are the same, but we're just using the technology to pass the message
Yeah.
more efficiently,
Yep.
so
Hey,
yeah,
Diane.
I listened to it a lot, and yeah, I got up to page 63 where he asked me to get to, and he didn't ask me to like memorize it or
Yeah.
understand it or anything like that, but to just read it or listen to it once through so that we could go back through
Yeah.
it together.
Well, you were doing the first one. You were following directions.
Yep, I
And
was.
that's all you had to do. You didn't even have to understand it.
Exactly. And so, yeah, and then so yeah, once I got there and we did steps 1, 2, and 3 in a matter of, an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And then he launched me into step 4. Um, but yeah, in that hour and a half, I felt like, there was a lot of hope in that hour and a half
Oh,
doing
yeah.
steps 1, 2, and 3. Um, and so I was ready to follow direction at that point. Like, I think that's
Mhm.
where I was getting at with that whole point was that I was so defeated that I was just ready for some sort of direction other
Yeah.
than which direction is the liquor store. Uh, so then, yeah, you had me kind of thumb down a little bit on the same page, 58. It says they are naturally incapable of grasping and
Mhm.
developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. And he had me
Mhm.
highlight that. In the left column, he had me write number 2, be honest.
Mm.
So number
Yep.
1, follow directions. Number two, be honest. And, if I'm not being honest, I'm not following directions. So, like, really go hand in hand together,
They do. Yes, they do.
And being honest, especially after doing a short workshop with, somebody on the whole honesty factor with step
Yeah.
one and stuff like
Hmm.
that, man, I really realized that, like, even some of the silly things of lies, just
Yeah.
it's still there.
Hmm.
Um, and sometimes it is very hard just to be honest. But the
It
more you
is.
practice it, the more I practice it, the easier it gets.
Yep.
And I mean, yeah, it's actually really hard to lie now that you practice honesty so much, you
And
know?
that when you're honest, here's the thing, and we're not saying don't lie. We're saying be
Yeah.
honest. And it's
Yeah.
it's different. For us alcoholics, we have to think of this just a little bit differently. It isn't that I was a lying sack of shit. It's just that I didn't know how to be honest. I had to be taught. I needed this book. I needed I needed a sponsor to help me with the language. And then once I understood that a little bit, I was like, okay, I get it. Because when I'm honest with me, and that's hard to do, then I can be honest with everybody else.
Yeah.
It's the only way it works.
Yeah. And when I did meet my sponsor on day three, that's when he asked me to do the daily phone call. And I think that was one of the biggest things I was dreading with the sponsor. And
Hmm.
I think it was because not only one, obviously I'm being told what to do, but two, it's like I'm not in control.
Yep.
I have a babysitter. Um, and the thing that ticked me off the most was I hadn't read the whole big book just yet, but it's not in the big book. It's not in the big book to call your sponsor every single day, right? So that's why I think it irritated me. But the moment he explained it to me, right?
Yeah.
He said this builds accountability, it builds integrity, doing what you say you're
Yes.
gonna do. I'm
Yes.
all about definitions, and he gave me that definition on day three, doing what you say you're gonna do.
Yeah.
Oh fuck, I gotta do that. You're right. I gotta start doing what I say I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
Um, so even from day three, once again, like you said, yeah, I was following directions. I was calling him every
Yeah.
day. I was being honest. And, if for some reason I didn't make that call, I needed to be honest the next day and just be like, I forgot, instead of coming up with some shitty excuse.
Exactly. You know what? I would much rather hear, you know what? I slept through my alarm. That happens to me a lot. I'm sorry I missed it. I was sleeping. I
Yeah.
can't, I just can't lie anymore. Something that I caught here was when we get with a sponsor and our sponsors are transparent because, I don't like sponsors that like hide things. Oh, you'll thank me later kind of stuff. I give them
Yeah.
everything. And I
Hmm.
want to be transparent because it's not my recovery.
It's
And
not
you,
my
as a
message
person, get to
either.
make your own decisions.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
your
And
sponsor, by the way. I think he's awesome.
I I love him too. Yeah, no, I thought the Alcoholics Anonymous was secret organization and you had to, like, give this secret entity your soul in order to get this like
Oh,
secret
no.
message. And it's not secret.
No.
We'll give you the answers.
Yeah, we will.
And so, yeah, my sponsor just being, like you said, transparent, being open, being, willing to, because I had heard all these horror stories of,
Yeah.
women stay with women, men stay with men. And I honestly didn't even know if this man sponsored women or not. And I
Yeah.
got lucky on that factor too.
Yeah.
Um, and I will say probably more out of a lot, I go to a lot of meetings still. I still go to a lot of different meetings, not just
Sure.
like the same meeting.
I
I go to
know.
a lot of different meetings.
Yeah, because we jump
And
around on them.
yeah, and at my sponsorship family meeting though, I would say I see more men and women there sponsoring, opposite sex or
Sure.
whatever people are going with. they aren't closed-minded to that. Granted, there are some that do still stick men with men, women with women, and
Yeah.
that's totally fine too, but they're not sitting there saying what, the others are doing is wrong too. So
Yeah.
that's kind of
I think
interesting.
and there again, it says in the big book, it's your recovery. And it doesn't say anywhere in here, men with men, women with women.
Mhm.
All I see is children of God. That's what I'm looking at. Now, for me, I don't want to do a 4-step with a female. It's just how I am. And I'm not going to do a female's 4-step. I'm too shy. I don't know what, but I'm just being honest with myself,
Yeah.
and not everybody else is that way. And that's okay.
Yep. And if I, you know, didn't grow up a tomboy, didn't have all brothers, wasn't just kind
Yeah.
of like somewhat of a male mindset some days as it is, I don't think I could handle a male's fifth step either. Those are some brutal things, man, and they're different. Men and women's fifth steps are completely different.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'm not saying like people who stick with the same sex by any means is that wrong either, I like you said, it's your recovery, like
Yeah.
whoever you feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
But I will say one thing, I do highly suggest doing your fifth step with another alcoholic,
Yeah.
not a
I
priest,
do recommend that
not a
also.
therapist,
Yeah.
somebody who's done a fifth step themselves, at least. So
And it says in
kind
the
of,
big book that you do not have to do your 5th step with your closed mouth friend. Somebody says it in there. Okay.
yep,
Or in this case, your sponsor. You're not required to do that as
no,
long as it is done fearlessly and thoroughly.
yep, exactly. So, and that kind of brings us to the third suggestion now, too, actually. It's at the bottom of the page, 58. I'll read the sentence that he had me highlight. It says, some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. And he had me in the left-hand column, right, number 3, be open-minded. So following directions, being honest, and now I'm being open-minded.
Yep.
And this one, I've actually really been working on this open-minded one the last like
Yeah.
probably 2 weeks now.
Okay.
Um, especially around AA in general. Because I mean, man, did I have a lot of content prior to investigation coming
Sure.
in. But once I started actually learning it, I'm like, oh, well, now I know exactly what I want and what I need. And,
Mhm.
that's where I got myself in trouble in the first place, thinking that I knew what was right for me and what I needed. And in reality, me going to random meetings and hearing random people, or even listening sometimes to the person I don't want to listen to,
Yep.
I start hearing the similarities versus the differences if I stay open-minded.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, man, what I was doing was not getting me really anywhere as far as, spiritual fitness goes.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and probably not in many other ways either,
Yeah.
physically, mentally, financially.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
So,
and for me, like in the last couple of weeks, like I've noticed that, I'm like, I'm taking myself too seriously. So I've been going to some meetings that kind of screw around and having a little bit more fun. So I can accept the fact, hey, Dion, this is kind of how it goes. And it's okay.
yeah.
Um, but open-mindedness, once it doesn't stop. Because I find even no matter how long I've been in this program, I will find things that I am not open minded about, and, you know, it's okay to give other people space for a little bit so we can figure out what's going on, you know. But I think the biggest thing for me as far as open mindedness goes is going back to being honest. Maybe I see somebody doing something that irritates me. I got to be open minded enough to say, am I doing that also? Because if so, I need to change it. And that's really when it started, when open mindedness started to affect me, when I would question myself. Dion, do you really think that way? Do you really feel that way? Have you looked at this long enough actually make a good decision on it, you know?
Yeah. And that's getting back into the honesty part again too, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. But yeah, being open-minded, I mean, my grandma's kind of drilled that one into me since I was a kid, you know. It was
Yay.
you're being closed-minded, you know,
Yeah.
think outside the box, you
Yep.
know. I was blessed with some pretty cool people that, you know, helped me think
Yeah.
about thinking outside the box or, you know, not using the hate word. We kind of
Yeah.
talked about that the other night in a meeting, you know. It's that I'd rather use certain cuss words than the hate word some days, you know,
Yeah.
but yeah, so and then that brings us, you know, to number 4. It's on page 59, and this one's
Hmm.
probably my favorite because it can be worded so many different ways. But the part he had me highlight was half measures availed us nothing.
Mm.
And he had me write number 4, do the best I can. Do the best I can. And then he also had me write best of my ability.
Yeah.
And so, you know, they go hand in hand. Yeah, we're trying to keep it simple here. So, you know, I got to do it to the best of my ability. Um, and when I go through it with sponsees, and I think even when I went through it with my sponsors, with my sponsor, not sirs, just one. You know, when I went through it with him, you know, I was like, man, this says don't do it half-ass. And
Yeah.
that was another thing that like was really instilled in me as a kid. Like, if I
Yeah.
was gonna do it half-ass, why do it at
All
all?
of it. Yeah. Yeah. If
And
you ain't gonna do it right the first time, don't do it. Yeah. That's how I was
yeah.
raised.
And so, you know, as a kid, you want to say a cuss word, right? And like my parents were like, well, you can say half-ass as long as you don't do things half-ass. And
Ah.
so it's kind of motivation, you know, not to do shit half-ass. So yeah, so half measures availed us nothing. I really
Yeah.
got to be putting in full effort. I got to be doing it the best I can. And if I, you know, if I'm slacking or if I'm trying to say, oh, yeah, I am doing it the best I can, but I'm really not, then
Yeah.
once again, I'm not being honest. I'm
Yeah.
not
And you're
following directions.
you're gonna know. You're gonna know
Mhm.
because we all know what's gonna happen. You know what I'm gonna say at this point. You've been listening to me too long.
The dude
Uh,
in the nude is gonna
yeah,
see you.
it's the belly is gonna tell you. It's gonna be like, no,
Yep.
you didn't. No, you didn't. You lazy fuck. My brain tells you it's like, no, you didn't. You liar. You're lying, Dion. Right? The thing is, so yeah, I love this line and I like the way that we put it because sometimes the best of my ability isn't much.
Yep.
Sometimes the best of my abilities only steps 1, 2, and 3. Sometimes I have to go back to basics. Some days I'm on fire and I get a lot done, but it's not like that every day, but it balances out, right?
Yeah.
So if I can honestly go to bed at night and say, did I do the best that I could with what I had today? And I can usually say yes. It isn't always yes. It isn't always, but then I'll recognize those things so I can work on them. I don't beat myself up about it. What I say is, oh, Dion, we can't let things fall through the cracks here. We got to follow these directions and be a little more honest. It all comes back to this. So,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you said you explained it really well, and my sponsor, he explained it to me pretty well too. You know, he said, "Yeah, I was super excited," and I'm talking as though I'm him right now, right? He said,
yeah,
"I'm super excited," and he's talking to his sponsor, my grand sponsor, and he's telling him, you know, I planned an hour a day to do step work. And my grant sponsor just was like in a very like non-proud way, just very flat with him, like, well, is that to the best of your ability?
yeah,
You know? It's so true. It's like, well, some days I might have an hour, and some days I might have 4 hours, and some
yeah,
days I might have 5 minutes. But is that truly to the best of my ability? Am
exactly.
I setting a goal that's, you know, out of reach or not obtainable every day, or am I setting a goal that's, you know, too low of a goal too?
Yeah.
Um, and
Where
really
we
life,
feel it's when we feel satisfied, and that's kind of a dangerous area. But there again, it's a balance. There's sometimes, I'll go live 3-4 times a day because I'm trying to do something to the best of my ability. Right?
Hi, Gary.
Hey, Gary, good to see you, brother. So I'm trying to do what I can to the best of my ability I have to feel like I got it done. If I can honestly say, Dion, did you do everything you could? Yes. Then I'm okay. I can move on.
Exactly. And and then for me, that comes out in my 11th step journal each night too. I get to like look back at the day and see if I truly did do it to the best of my ability.
Mm-hmm.
And if I did, then, like what you always say, all I get to do is give myself a pat on the back and move to the next day and try it again to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
It's not like I won the war. I'm not fighting the war anymore. I'm not fighting. I'm
Yeah.
literally just living. I am chilling these days. So
Yeah.
it's really
Exactly.
nice. So
It
yeah,
brings me that serenity. And when I do that, what happens is it opens that door to God more. So
yeah,
just wanted to throw that in there.
yeah. No, 100%. When, like you said, when you open yourself up, the big book says what we were doing by drinking and being in our misery and our irritable, restless discontent, we were blocking ourselves off from the spirit of the sunlight.
That's
And
right.
so by being open-minded and doing it the best we can, we're really truly opening ourselves up for something different
That's
and
what
new.
all of this is getting closer to God. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so then now we get to flip to page 85 and there we go. Okay. So this is right in the middle of the page. He had me highlight what we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. And on the right-hand column, he had me write number 5, do this every day. Yeah. So, what I really have is, I love the way you say it. I can't stay sober on yesterday's recovery.
Yeah.
I can't stay accomplished on yesterday's accomplishments. Like I have to continue. The way I describe it to my sponsees is I continuously have to be growing and moving forward and not necessarily like searching for the best all the time, but just like
Sure.
moving forward. But I describe it as though like I can't stay stagnant. That being
Yes.
stagnant is putrid water. And the moment you say putrid water to somebody, especially, maybe an alcoholic and detox, they're like, oh, yeah, no, I don't want to be that stuff. And kind of kicks them back in the gear. And I
Yeah.
think I heard that in a meeting. I don't think I heard that from my sponsor. Maybe it was, but I mean, my sponsor really didn't have to get on me too much about doing my step work.
Yeah.
Um, I think there was one time when I did, I was like, oh yeah, I got busy yesterday and I might be able to work on it today. And versus him being like, you need to, or you're failing or anything like that. All he was like was, well, yeah, you're doing really good. You don't want to lose that momentum. And, he just like was
Yeah.
encouraging.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I've also been trying to take it on that note too and being open-minded and yeah, when you're a hiring manager and a sponsor, it's kind of hard, but you learn a lot. You learn
Yeah.
to I mean, I didn't ever pray for patients, but I'm surely
Yeah.
getting them, right?
Yeah. Well, you didn't pray to become a leader either, but you are.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, and
know.
that's kind of something that's always just been there for the most part.
Yeah.
Um,
It's one of yeah.
and I've always just tried to
Virgos are
take
we're natural born leaders. We're purple people eaters. But yeah, my dyslexia coming in. Doing this every day. I want to talk about the importance of this. Number one, I drank every day.
hmm
Okay. And
Me
I
too,
tell
and
you
if I
now, it was
didn't,
for more than an hour.
yes. Yeah.
So when we say, oh, I put an hour in today, we're like, good job. That's like being thanked for doing the dishes. It doesn't happen. It's an inside job. It's an inside job. I have to answer these questions, right? But the reason that it is important to do these things every day is because one day will come along and your brain will think, I don't need a meeting today. And you will be wrong. You'll be wrong. You'll probably be the most spiritually fit person you possibly could be. Okay? But I'm going to tell you something from experience. It is easier to skip the second meeting. It's always easier. And then I'm in danger. That is a path I cannot go down. All right? But don't feel overwhelmed that you have to do this every day because it's a daily reprieve. Right? So do this every day also reminds us to stay in that day. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Good
And a
stuff.
lot of people like that saying, one day at a time.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly what it is. And for me, I like all I have is today. And that's just because I like them more brutal, right? Like all I got
Yeah.
is today. All right,
Yeah.
cool.
I hear you. I'm a little bit more, like KISS is keep it simple, stupid. Because I'm being
Hmm.
stupid. So
Yep,
at the same time, I don't want to call myself stupid, but
exactly.
I'm a little bit harder. I'm my own worst critic, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So
So after he had me highlight these things and write those 5 things, he went back through it and was like, all right, so the 5 suggestions, the thirdly, follow the path, follow directions, be honest, be open-minded, do the best I can, and do it every day. And it almost got to a point where I said those things in my head some days versus saying like the serenity prayer, which isn't in the big book, you know? And not that the Serenity Prayer isn't gold to me, because I also chanted the shit out of that in the beginning too. But
mhm.
I needed something else to chant in my head some days. And something that was just, the Serenity Prayer brings me serenity. This brings me hope that it's not that complicated. It brings
Mhm.
me motivation that it's not that complicated.
Yeah.
Um, Anytime somebody looks alcoholic or non-alcoholic, we look at a big job that needs to be done
Yeah.
and we're like, oh, how am I going to do this?
It's
But then once,
overwhelming.
yeah, once we come up with a simple plan and start getting into it and you get a rhythm, then it's done before you even know it,
Yeah.
and that's kind of how I felt with this one. Um,
I'm going to throw in just at the end here. It's not necessarily even a 6, but what I'm going to do is just tell everybody what happens when you do this. I'll tell you, progress happens.
mhm.
Progress. You know, and that progress will add up day after day. In the beginning, everything I did was so small. It was minuscule. And I kept it that way because I was used to making my problems bigger than they had to be. So that keep it simple, and that's why we need to follow directions so that my mind isn't going somewhere else. But when we add all of these things together, what you get is progress. You will be a different person. The 9th step promises will happen. You have your book in front of you. You're getting ready to read something. While you read that, we'll do a little closure and we'll call it a podcast.
All right. The 9th step promises.
Well, I thought you were getting ready to read something, so
No,
okay.
no, I had the book out because that's where my 5 suggestions are.
Oh,
Then I've had the book the whole time. My cat was
quick as it
making a
ever
weird
was.
noise. That's why I stood up. I'm like, do
All
you want me
right.
to read the 9 step promises? I will.
I'm going to read something else real quick.
Oh,
I'll read us out. And thank you.
and since I'm on video too, I kind of, the manual to the big book, it's nothing big either. It's literally like, I don't know,
Yeah,
15 pages, you
yeah,
know, half
exactly.
pages. So full pages, it's 7.
All right. So I'm going to read out page 2 75. This is Dion's favorite part of the big book, and the stories. And it's called The Keys to the Kingdom. And when we do follow directions, when we are honest and open minded and we do the best that we can every single day, this is the stuff that happens. AA is not a plan for recovery that can be finished and done with. It is a way of life, and the challenge contained in its principles is great enough to keep any human being striving for as long as he lives. We cannot outgrow this plan. As arrested alcoholics, we must have a program for living that allows for limitless expansion. Keeping one foot in front of the other is essential for maintaining our arrestment. Others may idle in a retrogressive groove without too much danger, but retrogression can spell death for us. However, this isn't as rough as it sounds, as we do become grateful for the necessity that makes us toe the line, and we find that we are compensated for the consistent effort by the countless dividends we receive. A complete change takes place in our approach to life. Where we used to run from responsibility, we find ourselves accepting it with gratitude that we can successfully shoulder it. Instead of wanting to escape some perplexing problem, we experience the thrill of challenge and the opportunity it affords for another application of AA techniques, and we find ourselves tackling it with surprising vigor. The last 15 years of my life have been rich and meaningful. I've had my share of problems, heartaches, and disappointments because that is life. But I've also known a great deal of joy and a peace that is a handmaiden of an inner freedom. I have a wealth of friends, and with my AA friends, an unusual quality of fellowship. For to these people, I am truly related. First, through mutual pain and despair, and later, through mutual objectives and newfound faith and hope. And as the years go by, working together, sharing our experiences with one another, and also sharing a mutual trust, understanding, and love without strings, without obligations, we acquire relationships that are unique and priceless. There is no more aloneness with that awful ache so deep in the heart of every alcoholic that nothing before could ever reach it. That ache is gone and never need return again. Now there is a sense of belonging, of being wanted and needed and loved. In return for a bottle and a hangover, we have been given the keys to the kingdom. And I truly, truly believe that. When I talk about it, that we are chosen, when I say that we have a job to do, that's what I'm talking about. Amber, I know you weren't feeling well. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
doing
you,
this.
Dion. And yeah, it's interesting. You know this about me. I do not care for the stories in the back of the book. I am the first 164 pages
Yep.
thumper, right? But what you just read is, of course, marked in my frickin' book. I have that whole part
Thank you,
marked, and
Parker.
yeah, yeah. Well, not from him. Who knows where I marked it from? Normally, I'm
I
actually really
I
good
read
about,
it. I read it a lot, and I've read it on my
yeah.
lives quite often. So,
Normally, I
you
mark
know,
who reads it and when
yeah.
they read it, and there's no markings, but it's marked.
And what were you doing? You were being open-minded.
Exactly. Yeah,
That's
no,
probably the best part now is that I get to now be a leader and show other people how I do it through my actions.
yeah. I was just talking to my son the other day, though, too. When you don't want to do something, it's kind of like where the big book talks about, going places and doing things, so long as you have a legitimate reason for being there,
Yeah,
going and doing the thing that you don't want to do. If it's for a good reason, then, after you go and do it, you're gonna feel good no matter what
yeah.
it is. Or if
I,
it's productive, it doesn't have to be good.
it's the way
But
it always
yeah,
happens for me too. Yeah,
even though it's been a rough week, it's been a good week because I used all the tools that I had between the 12 steps and therapy and got through my week and was able to do the podcast and now I feel good. So
yeah.
I
Yay.
suggest doing those things you don't want to do. And I heard someone say in a meeting the other day, do the things that you're fearful of, do them with fear and just do
Yeah,
them. you know,
Well,
and I love that. I'm like, fuck
do
the
it with,
fear, just do
yeah.
it.
Well, what were we just talking about? Right before we came on, I was telling Amber, I get nervous. I still get nervous doing these things. She's like, I'm not nervous at all. But and it's different for people. I still get nervous, and it's okay.
Oh yeah.
It's a fear. The cool thing is I can walk through my fear because I got God. I've got roomfuls of courage that I can bring with me too. So I don't mind if the fear is there. It's just another feeling.
And it's temporary.
And temporary. This too shall pass.
Exactly.
Thank you to all of our listeners. We appreciate you. Amber, again, thanks for everything. This turned out great. I hope everybody has a fantastic Friday night.
Yeah.
I love you. I love you. You want to say your byes real quick?
Bye.
I love you. Peace out and have a day.